Ah oui, tu vas le mettre là ou tu veux ici? Yes, you have a clicker. Sa réputation, elle est déjà faite. Hein? Toi, tu te balades. Tu vois. Deux fois déjà. Alors. Maintenant, il va s'asseoir.
I know some of the speakers are like.
Okay, good to go. Thank you, everybody. It's great to see so many new faces. My name is Toon van Acht. I'm the CEO of Data.be. That's my day job. But Fintech Belgium is a grassroots organization, and our board members, who are unpaid by the way, are trying to make it all work. And it's great to see so many new people here. I understood there was a Pay Belgium meeting in the building today. Can maybe the Pay Belgium even raise their hands so we can? Oh wow, 1/3 of the room is from Pay Belgium. That's quite impressive. So great to see. We're not going to talk directly about that, but we're going to have a great evening about open finance, PSD2, 3, and whatever maybe beyond of that. And without further ado, I want to invite Dave Remy from KPMG, our host on stage, to give the short formal opening address. So the mic's yours.
Thank you, Toon. So welcome everyone. It's great to see you all here. I remember last year we also had the Open Finance event here at KPMG, and it was a very lively discussion we had in the panel about the opportunities, but also the challenges around authentication, security, the repeated confirmations you had to ask from the account holder, etc. And I also remember that at that time it was hard to close the event because people just stayed and continued the discussions long after the panel. So we said, let's continue with now 1 year intermezzo, the discussion, and see how far we have progressed. Is PSD2 now really 2.0, and are we ready for PSD3? But most importantly, have the opportunities that we saw now become a bit more real, and how do we see the future? So welcome everyone. So this evening there will be the panel discussion, and afterwards you're more than welcome to join us upstairs with a view on the tarmac, with some nice drinks and some bites as well. Welcome.
Before you earn those bites, you're gonna have to bite through the program. And we have you see it on the slide there. We'll be starting with a new format, a fireside chat by Arnaud Sirten. I would invite him already to go on stage to set that setting, and with Maria Stashkiewicz, who's just arrived in time. So that's perfect. Nice to have you here. We can have the program as foreseen. If I'm well informed, on Tuesday, both of you were at the European Commission to learn everything about where open finance is going. And what I will do, because we have a camera, and we're going to move it a little bit closer, I'm going to give you the mic so the audience hears you very well. You're going to tell us a little bit more about what happened there and inform our public on the latest states on open finance.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I made it on time, finally. I took the wrong exit. Hopefully the Commission will not take the wrong exit when they are publishing the proposals. Yes, indeed, we had the chance to meet those who will write the PSR, as we learned, and D as well, and the Open Finance Framework. So the June 28th, this is when the 3 proposals will be published, Open Finance Framework, PSR, and D, and the Digital Euro. So it's going to be a date that everyone will hate or love, we'll see in the future. And we'll share with you some of the main points in, I guess, 4 areas on data that will be newly accessible, on the way of access, on the compensation and the licensing, and maybe some other points. But we'll have we're going to have a warm-up question on PSD2, because the Commission told us that they learned from the implementation of PSD2 of what went wrong. So what lessons have they learned, and where did the market actually went from the time of the implementation to now?
Okay, thank you. So indeed, to start with, I would like to come back to some point that we have identified. As you know, we made over the last 3 years different barometer to have some view on how the PSD2 was perceived by both banks and fintechs, and you will see that if we are looking back to the conclusion that we had at the time, there are indeed some points that we mentioned at this stage and that were taken into consideration by the Commission in the job they made to build the new proposition, the new regulation actually. So we identified at the time that the regulatory, the interpretation of the regulatory context was not 100% clear. There was on top of that a lot of technical gaps in the way the specifications were interpreted by the different players, and that was leading to some problematic around stability, some problematic around technical compatibility between different players, could be bank, could be fintechs, could be TPPs, and it was clear during the different discussion that we had that there was a clear need for stabilization, but as well, and that was even more clearly mentioned during the last barometer that we made, some need as well to extend the different services that we can have, and that there was a clear need to have a move from an open banking to an open finance and even to an open data framework. And that's actually the type of things that are taken into consideration by the Commission in the job they've made and in the proposition that they will do. In the meantime, if we are looking to the way the market has evolved, we can see that despite that lack of clarity and that lack of clear regulation until now, there is an increasing number of TPP coming on the market. They mentioned based on the investigation that it was doubled. And they've made a statement as well that if we look into the stability and the quality of the system currently developed, there are some real improvement at the bank side, and there are still some of the fintech currently coming on the market that have some technical issues still to solve. So that's where we are, and based on that, they are coming, as stated, with a new regulation, but as well they're working on an improvement on the RTS as well.
Yes, so now to the Open Finance Framework. The broader context of the Open Finance Framework is the fact that with its data strategy that the European Commission undertook when it started the tenure 3 years ago, was it? Is that it wants to create the so-called data spaces in several areas, in agriculture, health, mobility, industry, Green Deal, and of course in finance. So those data spaces will define how and what can be accessed and under what conditions, of course. And in the Open Finance Framework, there will be new data opened. What it will be?
Yeah, exactly. So, as mentioned, so in that financial data space that they would like to build, there was clear willingness to include data that are concerning loans. That was one of the main points that was mentioned and that we identified in the previous barometer as well. They would like as well to include some information about mortgage, about insurance, about different type of pension services as well. So, but they still have to put some limitation in place due to the fact that we still have to consider data protection, and they would not go too far in the process. So, for instance, there are some limitations that are defined for health data or some information that are as well related to credit data analysis and measurement to grant that some people. So there are some limitations on those aspects that are to be taken into consideration in respect to data protection aspects.
Yes, indeed. So the Commission will open new, will make available new data in various on various financial accounts, but the sensitive data on those accounts will not always be accessible to third parties. And I think now the most important and complicated question, when I look at the faces of people who were listening with me to the Commission, some of them are here with us, we are a little bit, I would say, I don't know if help, well, definitely confused, and I think the Commission is taking a little, it's my personal opinion, a little bit too complicated, overstretch of how it wants to solve the question of data, the compensation, sorry. So the Commission came up with an, I would have to say, interesting idea that reflects what is already on the market. Can you tell us more about it?
Okay, so if we're looking back to the way the things are working, so we had two different approaches. First, to access the data. We'll start by that point. We have, of course, some API usage with all the problematic that we mentioned, and there was as well multiple cases where we're still using to access the data different type of user interfaces. So what they would like to do now to put that correctly in place is not yet to mandate, but to push more and more for API usage and to define some limitation in the UI usage that could now be considered really as a backup plan and not as a main approach to do the interaction between the different players. So that's a fact, but it's not yet something that will be completely regulated. They're pushing in that direction, but we have now one step that is still expected to be able to come to a complete regulation, on that side. Knowing that, they will anyway build some specific rules to allow the interaction between the different players, define some set of parameters, and define the condition of usage depending on the type of player that you have. To be able to manage all those regulations aspects, there is the idea to propose to have a scheme managing the entire relationship between all the players. Even they're giving a possibility actually to have multiple schemes with the difficulty still to define how we will manage the interoperability between all of them. That's still a point that is not 100% clarified in what they will publish, but that is still under discussion. And in the case that there are no real candidates to take that functionality of scheme, that is something that can come again under the regulation of the Commission itself.
Yes, you did. So if you have a clearer picture now, you can raise your hand. So the basic idea is that the Commission will, first of all, is not in a position to mandate only APIs because it's not technology neutral, but there will be a very strong push towards using API only, with very strict exceptions when customer interfaces can be used. And how the data will be accessed only through schemes that the industry is supposed to create. So you can imagine that my take is that there will be maybe not 27 schemes, but variety of schemes in different countries, something like we had with the standards. Maybe, hopefully I'm mistaken, but I'm not seeing this as a good development because it's going to be probably the biggest players again defining those schemes. But we may give it a try and maybe even as a committee try to establish our own schemes. Well, why not? And if the industry is not willing to or is not able to create such schemes, the Commission, as you said, will push and maybe will even, but could even mandate one of the standardization body to do this, for example. And one of the main differences with PSD2 is that data will not be accessible for free. It will have to be, the data holders will have to be compensated. You already mentioned that. I don't know if you would like to add anything else.
Maybe a few words on that, and coming again to the different points that were discussed, the business model to build around the PSD2, potential PSD3, and the usage of open data, open finance was not 100% clear. The good thing that we can have if we have now clear rules for compensation principle between all the players that will be involved is that will give some clear financial condition on data usage, due to the fact that they will probably put some reference on some grids to make that kind of pricing model, and that will give an opportunity for all the involved players to build probably clearer business case as well around the usage of the different data in that context.
Yeah, so as we understood, Commission will not regulate the pricing, but it will it may give some guidelines.
They'll give some principles.
Yes. And the fourth important point is on licensing. As we understood the Commission, there will be no special license for open finance for those who are already regulated.
Correct.
Okay.
Voilà. The only thing is that they will probably define for new players some kind of minimum set of check to be done, but indeed it will be more a question of identifying risk already involved, but without a specific accreditation or certification process at this stage. But this is something that is probably still under some discussion to define the exact rules and condition to access. For the moment, probably a surprise for the delivery of the regulation at the end of June.
Yes, and the last point I think that is also interesting to mention that is that unlike some of our associations active in the field that wanted to get not only read-only access to the data, and also wanted the Commission to mandate the initiation of actions like moving funds or closing or initiating accounts. This will not be part of the Open Finance regulation. And all of this that you heard have to be also taken with some perspective, because we still have a month for the Commission still has a month of discussions on political level of associations and stakeholders pressuring them. So in the end, the final text as per the Commission may be different. And again, another point that is also important to make is that even if the Council and the Parliament agree on their own positions, we're gonna have the European elections next year, so the process of the adoption, the final adoption, may be very prolonged. I don't know if you'd like to add anything else.
Yeah. Just one small thing then. So as you can see, with that current discussion that are going on, we're still at a stage where we cannot really talk about a revolution in that sector. So we'll still consider that a slow evolution process, but still a lot of work to do, basically.
Yes, so that's about PSD2, Open Finance, and Digital Euro is something that we haven't covered, but will be part of the package of June 28th that we are all happy to read in a month's time.
We're gonna keep improvising here tonight. Like, we have 4 minutes left. This never happened before that we started. So I'm using the 3 extra minutes. I want to know from other people who attended those meetings if there's something that has not been said that you found insightful, or something you learned, or something that shocked you. Anybody wants to? Oh, wow, we have somebody who was in the meeting. Great, super. I'm gonna give you the microphone.
The access for a special piece into central infrastructure. That's one surprise.
Yes, one thing
I'll give
we
you the
have
mic
probably.
first.
Thank you. One thing that we have probably forget to mention is that when it comes to the compensation for data access, yes, it will be mandatory, but there will be some exemptions for SMEs, so for fintechs, that the Commission is planning to apply. So it's in a way good news for the smaller, for the new entrants.
You were mentioning the access to the payment scheme itself, like PSP, and not going through banks again, right? Yeah. Okay, but that's also reality, or at least that's something they consider.
Yes, pretty much depends on who. Pretty much depends on who will create the scheme, and it's going to be a multi. Are
we talking about the same thing? I'm just wondering. Yeah. So here we're talking about the.
Please.
I will let you create the difference. Avoid the confusion.
You're talking about payment infrastructure, right?
Yes,
Okay.
payment infrastructure, those categorized as piece, does not have to access other layers to reach, for example, settlement capabilities within national infrastructure.
Okay. Thank you for that addition. Any more additions? If not, we're going to move on to the next speaker. And I'm going to do the outro. So another round of applause. Maria is heading the European Digital Finance Association, which is the umbrella of all the Fintech Belgiums around Europe. I would say that we have the expertise. Our next speaker up is Marc Clédé from Isabel Group. He has a slide deck, but he doesn't really need it. He's got. Here's the mic.
You asked me to prepare slides?
Yes. Not everybody gets away with a fireside. You brought the slides.
All right. So yes, there's a few faces, familiar faces, some of them not. So yes, my name is Mark. I'm from a company called Isabel Group. I'm also a co-founder of a company that used to be called Ibenity, which was acquired by Isabel Group 5 years ago. And what we were doing back then and are still doing within Isabel Group is basically bank API aggregation. It turns out that I'm actually not working on Ibenity anymore, starting from January, but that's all right. I'll just keep pitching what we do and give you some insights on this. And I myself am since January Chief Strategy Officer at Isabel Group, so I oversee many different things than just this kind of topic, I would say. But anyway, so we asked ourselves a question, okay, open banking in B2B, is this a thing or is this still a thing, right? Why B2B? Because this has been part of the DNA of the company, Isabel Group, for years, for 25 years exactly. Isabel Group was founded by the 4 major Belgian banks in 1995 to provide multi-banking capabilities to corporates. Super sexy, right? So yeah, it's what the business was built on. In 2016, they acquired Codabooks. For those who are from the accounting space, probably know them. Then Ibenity, then Clearfax, Clearnox in France. So, and also half of the shares of Dockel. So the group has been expanding through acquisitions for the past 5 years, but still with that focus on B2B, B2B2B, B2B2C. B2B2C. Anyway, enough with the acronyms. Is this still a thing? I think we covered some of the points already, and they pretty much stole some of the things I wanted to talk about, but okay. We saw clearly that it was a slow takeoff for B2B in open banking. First of all, because the directive itself was not necessarily fit for B2B use cases. There were so many discussions about what was included or not for the past years. But including support for business accounts, for instance. For some banks it was not included, for some it was, and it was a long cycle of discussions with regulators, banks themselves, in order to get there. So it's clear that B2B use cases were kind of the forgotten child of PSD2 for a while in open banking, but we kept on trying and pushing. There were also clarifications needed from the EBA. Were bulk payments in it? I mean, it took a while for this to be clarified and for this to really be forced upon the different banks. We still have stuff like 24 hours SCA validity, for instance, in some banks. So it's like your access is only valid for 24 hours. Okay, French banks do that. Go figure. In other countries as well. So really, the clarifications that were needed on B2B use cases by the EBA were really key in pushing the needle to those cases. Because if you want to connect your banking account to an accounting software, and you have to go back every 24 hours to your bank to confirm that you want to keep this link going, it's just not working. So this was really some of the things that we saw dragging down the adoption rate of open banking and PSD2 specifically in B2B use cases. And also, but that's more concerning larger SMEs or corporates, more complex mandate structures in the company, like employee A can access this, not that, can sign this, not that. So this is not supported by banks today. Let's be clearly honest, it's still a big issue we have in some countries. You have to go back to a branch with paper and sign stuff in order to make this happen. So it's still a very cumbersome process for some of the players like us that are really focusing on B2B. That doesn't mean that nothing is happening. And I just want to share a few numbers on what we clearly see in the 8 countries that we're present in. This is really gathered from our 200 plus software partners that are connected to our products. Mainly, our main business is done in Benelux and France. We do also have business going on in Spain, Italy, and other countries, but it's mostly, I would say, Southwestern Europe. That would be denomination of that area. And clearly what we see is that the main use case remains accounting, which is kind of interesting. You would assume that, yeah, there would be all of those super cool use cases, but the first thing that businesses want to fix is bank feed in their own system. And why did we see accounting pick up so much in B2B use cases? It's because before PSD2, you really needed to look at all the different national formats, I would say, or local schemes in order to connect to this. In Belgium, we had, and we still have, the Coda, of course. But some banks did not support Coda. So for those, yeah, you still needed to download manually your statements and upload them here or there. In Luxembourg, you need to go to Multiline, also a product from Visible Group, download all of these statements, send them to your accountant. Some accounting firm even have specific employee contracts with the companies that actually they work for in order to have a mandate so that they can go download it in the name of the company. So it's it creates a lot of weird setups, right? And also in some countries, like in the Netherlands, for instance, you had the bank opening, which was only available for specific large banks, not for smaller banks. And so there were still a lot of the market that was underserved, and mostly the smaller companies. And when open banking came in, suddenly started opening up all of that and said, hey, but now you can also do accounting on Triodos in the Netherlands, for instance. You can also do automated accounting on this weird bank that nobody's using, massively, or that a specific segment of the market is using. And so that's why we started to see this picking up really, really, really fast. So as soon as some of these points that I mentioned before started to be clarified, this started unlocking this kind of traction. But today it's still the same top one problem, I would say, that all companies want to solve. It's just reconciliating payments. Okay, so as long as we don't fix this, it's not like they're going to go into crazy stuff. But that doesn't mean nothing is happening. You can see daily finance. We're basically talking about making payments. Not much else. Payments, bulk payments. And then we have treasury management. No surprise, some use cases in real estate that we find quite interesting as well. But the vast majority really is accounting and daily finance. So that it's interesting to see how a new regulation, or well, it used to be a directive, it's going to become a regulation, but how all of these new things are just enabling the same good old use cases, at least for now. So we're not yet seeing the explosion of completely new businesses and new use cases today. Related exactly to what I said, and also the problems I listed there with the complex mandates and all that, obviously the types of companies we see using all of these products are SMEs, small SMEs. Because as soon as you go higher up in the chain, I would say, you start getting into more complex mandates. You start to get into more complex setups that are not yet well supported by open banking. Well, I would say the RTS we have for everything, even the standards that are existing today. So the vast majority is actually companies of less than 50 employees. I don't know if it comes as a surprise, and that doesn't mean that there's no business to be made with larger ones. But today, the easiest to catch on the market today are these ones, which happen to also be the ones that were kind of underserved before, right? Because when you look at even Coda or even Swift or these small companies, they cannot sometimes afford this, or they don't necessarily see that they need it. So the fact that open banking and PSD2 came in opened up the market for these ones. And that's clearly a classic innovator's dilemma, I would say. It's like you come from the bottom of the market with a lower quality, cheaper solution, and then you start eating up your way up the food chain, I would say. So it's quite interesting to see this evolution being almost like a classic bookcase of the innovator's dilemma from Clayton Christensen. But anyway, so yeah, mainly small companies. Hopefully, this will grow. What did we see as being the biggest enabler, I would say, in that? So it's basically accounting for small companies across Europe. That's what we see. Of course, there's more, but mainly that's what's happening. We started to see a shift, and it was really, I would say, 18, 24 months ago, The first one was really when it was clear that we needed to stop with all of the nonsense of SCA, 24 hours, 90 days, all that. And they said, it's 180 days and that's it. Okay. So one of the reasons why some of the accountants or some of the partners that we were trying to work with said, no, we don't want PSD2, because there's the 90-day SCA. Because they were afraid, for instance, that for accounting, they would miss some specific transactions. Like if their customer would not renew the SCA, they would lose a few days of transactions. And when you're an accountant, not having the complete data of your customer is your biggest fear. So suddenly when you go and you say, no, it's not 3 months, it's 6 months, suddenly it becomes okay. So somehow it shifted a bit. But the value for money was still not there, in a way that when you need to switch from a local existing scheme, Coda, ABIX, whatnot, I don't care what's happening in other countries, there's a lot happening. If you really want to say, okay, we're going to switch technology, we're going to use something else, the value you get from the switching needs to be higher than the cost of switching, right? It's a classic case, again, of migrating from one technology to another. And it was still not enough for a lot of businesses. What really triggered it was also banks starting to support bulk payments. Because then suddenly they started to see the value of going for it. They said, okay, fine, there's the 180-day SCA, but now we can also do payments, and we can do business payments, bulk payments. So now there's more value. Through the same interface, we can do both. So even if on the data side, we may be of less quality than what we use today, Coda, ABIX, even Swift, well, if we have bulk payment with it for that price, then that becomes interesting. And that is also the trigger that happened. So I would say that because of the slowness of getting to this point of changing the rules on SCA and also making sure that bulk payment was really in the directive, I would say, the adoption was not there. And that's really when we saw these things happening, that the traction started to begin and the flywheel started rolling. And now we really start discussing with some of the bigger companies, bigger accounting firms out there, in order to really help them on these cases at the EU level, not just in a local scheme. And even trying to, we get a lot of questions also on, hey, how can we combine Coda and PSD2 payments, for instance? Okay, interesting questions. How do we do this? But you start them seeing, okay, how can we start mix and matching the different things? But in essence, that's really the kind of things I wanted to say. I also looked a bit at the type of really what industry they're from. Unfortunately, there I didn't really have European classification of companies, so I looked only at Belgian companies. And I used the NACE code, which is clearly not the best way to figure this out, because even on my own consulting company, I have more NACE codes than, I'm not even sure the first NACE code that is listed is actually the one that is the representative of my activity. But anyway, so what we see is that we have a few specific industries that are more represented. And the one that came as a big surprise for me, and we did that analysis more than a year ago and again a few months ago, is construction. Suddenly, construction showed up. And we tried to dig this a bit more, and it turns out that construction is really an industry where, especially in Belgium at least, there's a lot of temporary companies that get created for specific projects, for instance. And so it's easier to manage, really, to manage those temporary companies if they can automate the accounting altogether, because they want to reduce the cost of managing these companies. So it's one of the possible reasons why construction seems to be one. It could also be that we actually have amongst our partners a partner that specializes in construction companies, but it could be one of the reasons why this is happening. So it's interesting that how, in digging in these numbers, you start discovering these specific usage that were not necessarily possible or not necessarily worth it with Coda or Swift or even something else. Open banking really enables those because it's a cheaper, easier way to get things done in a full self-service mode. You don't need to, again, sign additional mandates and all of that. You just create the account, hook it up to your ERP, and then you're gone. So anyway, just a few details. So what to expect now? Yeah, so PSD2 is not really a game changer for B2B at this point. We see things growing, and we clearly see that there's momentum happening, but we're not there yet. What's also interesting, and that's something we didn't really know a year and a half ago. A year and a half ago, it was always the question of, will there be a PSD3? I know some people even in the room said there will never be a PSD3. I think in a way he was right. He will recognize himself because there's going to be a new regulation, not a directive. So there's not going to be a new PSD, but there's going to be a PSR. Anyway, so, but the thing was that the question we were asking ourselves is this it? Like, is there something after that? Or is this, we're never going to go further than that, right? They're not going to come up with a new evolution, and we're going to stay like this for years. That was a bit the feeling. And even if there were already consultations on revising PSD2 and all that, it was not clear that something was really coming. And then it became clear that it's not going away. So yes, I wrote PSD3, but we started also seeing industry kicking in with SPA. We'll see what happens, because from what I understood, if SPA is not recognized as an actual scheme by the European Commission, banks will not be able to charge for it. So, which is kind of weird, because SPA is supposed to be, the compensation model that they seek. But yeah, so what we see is that both the regulators and the industry are not going backwards. So this is not going away, which is good news. It means that we know we still have stuff to do, but it's not going away. It's encouraging, I think, for a lot of people in the room. We might not like all of the evolutions happening, but at least it's not going away. I'm not going to go through that slide, because Jean-Gab may even have it in his own presentation. But anyway, that's an interesting thing that Consensus published, which is everything that's happening in the world about open banking, but that's Jean-Gab's presentation, so I'm going to leave it to him. What we see also is more creative use of SCA being more and more visible. There's something that we've been doing, for instance, for our own services. Every partner or every customer that is using SDD as a way to basically pay for our services, we actually use the SCA to make sure that the account that they were going to use to set up that mandate belongs really, or at least have sufficient proof that it belongs to them. But we've been doing that for 3 years now. And now we see this also being picked up, this kind of things, by larger players like Worldline. Partnership between Worldline and BNP recently is specifically about that. But it's interesting to start seeing SCA being used for these things, because a lot of people were seeing just SCA as a part of really just PSD2 and a way to sign payments, but it's actually more than that. And typically there, you would use an AI, I would say, license in order to do these things. You just need an AI license to provide that kind of service. You don't need a payment license. You just need a way to access, payment accounts. You don't need to be able to initiate payments themselves. So this combination of PSD2 and PSD1 features, I would say, is kind of an interesting way forward for an industry. And I think that there's going to be more and more of these creative ways, like combining old with new. And now that it's become a bit more stable and that we know it's not going away, we're going to see this. We're going to see this more. I stumbled upon this. I don't know if the video will work, but someone actually created an Open Banking UK connector on ChatGPT, which is quite funny, because when we started Identity, we were reverse engineering bank mobile apps. So basically connecting to the APIs that their mobile applications were using in order to exchange data. And the way we wanted to demo this was we actually built a chatbot. So it's interesting to see that 6 years later, of course, we didn't have the generative AI trend to it, but 6 years later, we're coming back to the same kind of things that were actually possible a while ago. Anyway, so I think I'm not saying that this is a game changer in itself. It could be, because ChatGPT, generative AI, could look into all of your statements and give you insights. So I think it could open up the door for crazy new features that you could see, for instance, in accounting software. Accountants want to become advisors. Okay, but what if they could have pre-prepared advice for their customers for them that they can just verify based on all of the documents and everything they have. This is the kind of things that open banking, open finance will allow eventually. This is both a good news and bad news, frightening news, I would say. But yeah, this is the kind of things that it seems like an anecdote, but it will come back and it will become bigger. It's the end of the freemium. I didn't really know all the things that that they just shared, but I think what's interesting is that, and that's something that maybe not everybody will agree with, but the race to the bottom on pricing is over. What we were seeing as bank aggregators is that there was a lot of price dumping at the European level, like bigger players, well-funded players selling IBAN access for a few cents. It's like at some point, it's not a viable model. You cannot. The quality is still not there for it to be a commodity. You still need a lot of investment, technical investment for it to work. You still need a lot of human investment for it to be supported correctly. Because when a bank fails, their customers call you, they don't call the bank. I'm not going to name it because the point is not to bash banks. But we had a Belgian bank here recently that was out for 17 days for what appeared to be a forgotten certificate update, so a certificate expiration. 17 days. So for those 17 days, customers come to us and they basically tell us, yeah, but I can access my bank application, so it must be you. No, you have to explain to them that the interface provided by the bank is not working. Now, 70 days is pretty long, right? So we've had already outages of banks in the range of 3 to 4 days. 70 days is kind of a record. But it also shows that we are 100% dependent on these connections. And if there's not, a decent service level agreement on these, we're actually doomed in the end, because you're just completely helpless when this happens. And there's no compensation you can ask the bank, there's no compensation you get from the NBB, but there is a cost that increases for you because you have to support these customers. Sometimes you give them a discount, because of course your job is also to make money on this. So it's a really complex situation to be in. It's the end of the freemium also because I also don't think that having everything for free is a way to go. At some point, banks need to also figure out a way to make money out of this. But I'm eagerly waiting for the guidance on what pricing the regulator will allow banks to charge, or at least the principles, because that's going to be quite important. I think that especially on B2B, it doesn't have to be free. Companies are okay to pay money to automate their processes. So the access to the account itself does not have to be free, but it needs to be reasonable. And then we'll see what comes up. More compliance, yay, we all love compliance. We never talk about DORA here, and of course, I put a picture of the cartoon, but if you don't know what DORA is, you should look it up because it will hit you in the face. And it's probably always already hitting you in the face. You have probably new packages on AML that are going to come your way if you do payments. So all of this is coming our way. NIS, so that's Network Infrastructure Security, I think, framework. Anyway, so there's a lot of different things that are coming into that are going to come at your face if you're in payments and have a PSD2 license or whatever that you will have to deal with. It's interesting because when I started 6 years ago on this, we were just talking about PSD2 and GDPR and the interplay between those two. Now we will have to look at the interplay between DORA, AML, NIS3, PSD3, Open Finance, TGA, ES. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But there's going to be a nightmare of compliance for product people and a wonderland of things for legal people. So if you want to start a new career, start a career in legal compliance. More sanity in fintech as well. I think also the race to the bottom is over, but the Cambrian explosion is also over. We're not going to see an explosion of new services like we saw in the beginning. There's been consolidation happening, and we also see more and more fintechs trying to find a viable business model and not just dumping prices like before. So hopefully more sanity. and more stability in these services is what we think will happen. So yeah, there's still a long way to go. There's a first step, and I felt a bit philosophical, so I used a quote from Lao Tzu. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. I think we just made the first step, and there's still many more to go. So thanks for your attention. I hope it was worth your time, and I'll meet you for the drinks later.
There's a moment for Q&A after this, so we open the door because I also felt it's quite warm for the people sitting up there in the sauna seats. So I hope you get a bit of fresh air now. Jean-Gab, you're up next. So we had the Belgian European view from Isabelle Group, and we're now getting a global perspective from what you are doing from Extend, providing solutions for people integrating PSD2 and Open Finance. Here you go, Jean-Gab.
Thank you. Good evening. So I'm Jean-Gabriel, co-founder of Extend. Extend is an independent bank account aggregation company. So we do provide bank access to many startup fintechs and some big companies, but as Mark said, not that much. I would like to highlight Cedric from Digital today because Digital is providing us the banking license up to now to allow us to provide our services on the 7 and 8, so payment initiation and account information. And it's a partnership we did a few years ago. I would like to thank you for your trust and your empathy, Cedric, about us, because we are starting now the process to getting our own license. Basically in Belgium at first, but quite fast on the United Kingdom and Israel market, pushed by some customers on those areas. As you maybe understood, we are technical guys, so we don't have a lot of ideas and insights from the regulation part. When we see at the frameworks beside PSD2, we have a technical point of view and we have a technical understanding of it, and we deal with that every day. So every side which will follow are driven by the fact that I'm a tech guy, a nerd, which eats pizza in front of his laptop. So when Xavier asked me to have a talk about what's happening around the world, I said, okay, that's a good idea. What's happening in Europe, in fact. So I just stepped back and try to just figure out what happened the last decade. And if you do remember, everything started because those guys at Ibanity, for example, built software using screen scraping or reverse engineering to try to get information from the banks, but without any link or legal link with those banks. And they did that because there was a need for applications. So there was a need for building tools. There was guys smart enough to build those tools, but there is no regulation for that. So customer data were moving from the banks to apps without any consentment or clearly understood consentment from the end users. It's not about criticism of what has been done, but the guys and the people working and creating the regulation, they started from scratch, basically. They said, okay, we have to create some kind of regulation, and we will invent the open banking. So they created what we know as PSD2. We spoke about the fact that it's not yet working properly today, but the guy started from scratch. So that's okay, it's working, it's better every day. It's not the best stuff yet, but we succeed in producing apps which give results. They did it the way, so meaning that we all understand that the business we are in today, like the bank account aggregation, has been created because there is not a framework which describes the way the bank has to provide information to the other players. So that created the business we are in, the aggregation, because we translate information from the banks into a standardized way for our own customers. if you look at what's happening in Mexico, they started quite at the same time as we did, but a few months later, and they just sat back and just checked what's happening in Europe, what's happening in UK. And then they took the inspiration from us and they start building their own open banking frameworks. The difference with our system is that the way it was implemented, you can get an access to branch information, you can get an access to ATM locations, opening hours, and stuff like that. That was the first version of open banking in Mexico. The second one was accessing statistical information, and then came the access to the transactions as we know it in Europe. But they went a step further because you can access not only payment information, but payment accounts, but also investment, cards, and loans. They also have something which is quite smart, is the fact that if you are a fintech getting the transaction information from the banks for your own customers, you have also to reverse the information and be able to share the data with the banks too. So it's a bilateral communication mechanism. So they sat down, they just saw what we did, and they improved. In Brazil, they also did the same, in fact. They sat back, they checked the guys in Europe and UK and say, oh, that's a good idea. Let's work in the same way. So in Brazil, in 1 year, they moved from phase 1 to phase 4, moving from accessing ATM location in phase 1, opening hours and stuff like that, to transactional data in phase 2, to payment initiation in phase 3, to what they call now Open Finance in phase 4. Meaning that Open Finance in Brazil, it's still related to finance. It's saving accounts, credits, investment product, and stuff like that. So it's very related to Open Finance. But they saw what we did, and they improved also. But they did that in 2021. If you look at what's happening in Australia, they did the same. They just check what we did, and they say, okay, we will take the inspiration from that, and we will build something which is the Australian way of working in the open banking. They just didn't take care about payment initiation. They have other framework for that. So if you look at open banking in Australia, it's not related to payment initiation. It's just getting information. They did something which is quite cool, in my opinion, is that the fact they don't call that open banking, but they call that customer or consumer data rights. It's a move in the paradigm. It's the way that we don't speak about the company sharing its data, but it's about you as a person, as a consumer, getting an access to your own data. The way they improve the process is also the fact that they say, okay, that's cool to do it in the financial industry, but we will move a step forward. Why not do that in the energy sector, in the telecommunication, in the insurance? So when they released their process in the CDR, they said, okay, we start with the financial industry, but in 2022, energy sector will have also to share the data. And a few months ago, the telecom industry has to share the data too. So those guys now, they are leading, in fact, the way the companies, the fintechs can use the data. And we don't speak anymore about fintechs as we are cross sector. But meaning that we see apps arising on the market in Australia, which are using information from the energy sector, mixing those information with the financial information of the user, and creating new added value services on top of that. And they plan with other countries related to and close to Australia, they are planning to work on what they call for the moment something like whatever sector open data. So that's the next step. They did the same. So they checked what we did, they understood, they improved, and now they are far away of what we are still now. So my point, in fact, is this one. We spoke about open finance a few minutes ago with Marie and Arnaud, but maybe we have to sit down, and I know that it will never happen, of course, it's just a pure reflection, but my fear is that we are going to say we will implement open finance, it will come into force in 2028, and when we will do that, when it will be released, accessible, usable by companies, we will just be 5, 6, 7 years below companies in Australia, in Brazil, or in Mexico. Meaning that those companies have the time to build tools today, to create use cases, to generate revenues, to validate their business ideas. And when we will be ready and say, okay, we are in 2028, let's start building new apps. In fact, we will have just no time to do it because people having 7 years of history behind them will arrive on the market with tools ready, business model ready, and already generating revenues. So that's a feeling. It's not the truth. I just don't know what's going to happen. But it's a fear that we share, and we think that maybe we have to expand outside of EU. That's the reason why it's part of our strategy, for example. The other feeling, it's related to also the slide you did, Mark, about the abbreviations. That's cool to have such kind of abbreviations, sorry. But it's difficult for the end user when you speak to startups, to fintechs, to guys which want to create products, to speak about PSD2. Just try this weekend when you are at a dinner, when somebody asks you what you are doing, you say, I'm in the PSD2 business. You will see the void in the eyes of the guy for the next 10 seconds because he just doesn't understand what's happening. So we see that it's not starting, it's not bumping, but maybe we have a problem of communication also. Maybe we have to create something or product or speak about product in a way that people, the common user, can understand those products and the name and the concept that we have behind that. That's the point. Thank you for your time.
I'm also going to take 1 second to thank the two people who are following still online. So we have Johan Buxets and François Hebet. So this is also for all of you. If you ever don't make it, you can tune in. We prefer to see you and you won't get the network and the great bites that have been promised. But it's nice to know that you can use our digital back. Our next speaker is going to give a pitch about this company. I need to make sure we pronounce dividend correctly. Yes, the Zen part of dividends, and I'll let you pitch this one. We have a shorter time than the other speakers, so let's try to gain some time on the agenda. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you, Fintech Belgium for having us. Thank you, KPMG. So I'm Yves, I'm the director of Dividend. At Dividend, we help investors maximize the dividend returns. Being investors ourselves, we fully understand the pain of receiving dividends on a cross-border basis and being taxed twice, being on withholding tax and then income tax. Right now, refund opportunities are widely missed out due to the complex, costly, and time-consuming procedure. And of course, non-standardized paper-based, because we can see in each country have its standard reclaim forms, is frustrate everyone, even specialists. Like I used to work also with a Big Four. It's also a mess for guys like who have experience in that field, because it's taking a lot of time, because I have to pay attention. What's the rate? Where do I go with the debt? So it's a really issue for everyone. And of course, building an intuitive dashboard, our solution help investors to reclaim their investment on foreign dividends. Our easy first step to do the reclaim, you just connect your securities account to our platform. Then you have an overview of all your position of your dividends and all your refund opportunities. And then you go and set up your claim. And after you set up your claim, you can choose which dividends and which date from which country or for which company you want to reclaim, and then you just submit your application. our reclaim analyzer. So we have also the facility or the flexibility to go via API, so we can connect the securities account API of the customer banks, or otherwise we can also, because we build our own securities aggregation APIs, that was really helpful for us, because if you have to call on other providers or other banks APIs, it could be still a problem. But additionally, we still support other traditional format like CSV, Excel, and PDF. Right now, we see a silo thinking in the industry, even big companies, where processes are all over the places. Like you have 10 providers for the reclaims, and sometimes you have providers who do the reclaims for other countries, which normally should not be. So we break those barriers between the front office, the back office, and the end user using our intuitive securities APIs, because with that access, we simplify the communication between all the stakeholders. And we are right now in the market the only future-proof solution, because not only we can do this, we also still support the traditional back office processes, and we are also front runner in some disruptive initiative like embedded wealth. So the reason we are perfectly connected to many international taxation authorities, as we are also connected to many stakeholders, be it private investor, be it tax advisors, be it family offices, be it custodians. So we are really the central nervous system where we are reliably and easily connecting all the dots. So this is not yet outside. So you have the first news about it. So we're going to be fully running at the beginning of Q3. This is our portfolio aggregation tool, where we will include a quantum power portfolio optimization, where clients or investors can see in real time their investment. They have also additional services like a real time day-to-day dividend calendar, so you don't have to go on other providers and try to know what's your next dividend dates, for example. And well, like we discussed already with some of you, we know it's a huge market. We have this 100 billion market on cross-border basis of withholding of dividends. Of those, 20 billions are on reclaim per year, and those are data from 2021. So I think it's growing roughly 10% each year, so it should be already more than that. So yeah, our product already showed great adoptions, and we have those names are there, were the confirmed names where we have signed contract, but we have a lot more that we are not allowed to talk. But yeah, we've seen really good response from the industry. So we have also a great team, like combining 30 years of experience from startups to unicorns. So we have diversified knowledge, be it securities, be it cloud computing, being quantum computing, being international taxation, being tech. So we have it all. So thank you very much for your time. I hope I was not too long, but we can go deeper. So to more details if you have more questions. Thank you very much.
Who has paid taxes on foreign dividends and didn't ask them back? Anybody in the room? You're aware? Okay. And KPG is a partner, so that will not happen again, right? From now you will claim them back. Okay, great. We are a little bit late on schedule, but we do want to get you in time up there. So for the next, I would say 25 minutes, we're going to have the panel. So I'm going to ask all the speakers and pictures in front of us here. Invite the audience to come up with a question, something you want to know. So the rule is always introduce yourself very short, your name and where you work and what your interest is in, eventually, maybe even, and then to which speaker you address your question. So first up, raise your hand and I will pass the mic. So we have
I had a question on the open banking framework in Australia, where you referred to the fact that they looked at Europe first and then improved to do better in Australia. Now, Australia is very close to Asia, where I thought we got our inspiration for open banking with all the super apps, etc. To what extent do you think that has also influenced Australia, given the fact that they look at it from a much broader perspective than purely payments today?
To be honest, I don't have the deep history of what happened in Australia. And we don't also have a knowledge about how it's working fine deeply in Asia. But the fact is that every time a country starts the process of thinking about open banking, they analyze the market and take everything that has been done correctly everywhere elsewhere. So the Australian guys, they just started the last one in the process. Canada is starting right now. But they took everything which was good. So that's the reason why we see such a proposal in their way, and in fact, they just neglected the open banking. They just started open finance, but having in mind open data for every company. And the pace they have is very fast. So I don't know if it's related to the fact that Asia is close to them, but I think it's the state of mind. It's just thinking at a certain point, okay, we see what's happening, we think, we take a white paper and we start thinking again. And we want to improve and go very ahead of what the other are doing. They don't just align on what the other do, they go a step further. So what I wanted to highlight is the fact that every time there is an improvement, in fact.
Next question. Go ahead, raise your hands. No, false maneuver that you were sitting up for a question. I'm sure other people must have pressing questions for our audience. I'm just gonna wait till somebody asks another question. Very patient.
Are we literally going to wait 25 minutes?
25. Yeah, we're gonna push this to the limit. I mean, you said there was no disruption happening, and we're gonna have the uncomfortable feeling going up, and at some point somebody's asking a question. Can it be stupid questions? Because there's none of those, as you all know. So go ahead.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
If someone has a stupid question, I can do a stupid answer.
Very good. We're gonna sign you. Okay.
Cedric from GTO. I don't know who will be able to answer, but what do you think of the interplay then for digital euro and open finance? So, who wants to pitch on that?
Now they're as enthusiastic. It's like very smart move. I see what you do there. Can I be the gentleman to give you the mic? You say no.
Yes, you can always give me the mic. Well, I'll probably be the one now giving the stupid answer, but no. The thing is that the Commission has so far been very, very silent and very closed on any hints, giving any hints on what the digital euro will be. So it's not that easy to say. The fact, of course, that the three proposals will be published at the same time, I think that's already a hint that there will be some, I don't know if an interplay, but definitely it is a sign that the Commission will treat it as in a bulk. And so far from the discussions that I was participating in, digital euro was one of the main reasons behind digital euro is to provide an alternative to cash, something like a digital cash. So I don't know how this fits into the PSD2, but definitely digital euro will be one of the things that we probably can integrate thanks to Open Finance and PSD2. I don't know if you have any other.
Yeah, great initiative. Pass the mic on. I was going to do the same. You want to add something to it? You want to? Okay, great.
So it's a good point of to seeing things, because, for example, when we talk about open finance, it's quite broad, but we are more focused on the payment side. So, for example, for us in the securities business is quite different. There we have to be more creative, because people say that you are PSD2 related. We are not doing payments per se, for example. So, but we're still much more involved in open finance, but namely open banking, where we need to have a broader connection to all securities accounts. So for us, digital euro, it depends. Then I'm not personally in favor for it, but for us, it could be also a good point to have a digital euro. Then it's easier for us to connect securities. But then we have to see what they have in mind. But like she said, I think it will be also in bulk. But because I don't see how they can go in the specific the first time. I think the first time they'll go in bulk and then they will maybe specify it later. That's my point of view.
I'm gonna try.
Go ahead.
For me, I'm not necessarily interested in the interplay with PSD2, but more because there's no digital euro without a strong digital identity, and it's completely blurry there because we have IDAS2 coming up, but I think this is going to be the most interesting interplay because the digital. I mean, it's not like every euro in circulation today has a banknote somewhere in the world, and so I think pretty much a big part of the euros we exchange today are already in a way digital, not in the way, of course, they plan to do it in the directive, but yeah, I'm more interested in that. What's going to happen with identity, digital wallets, all of this? That's more important, in my opinion, than knowing if this will be included or not in PSD, Open Finance. I think that's the key question. How do you make it happen without a strong digital identity? And there, what is the role of private players and public players?
Maybe because he didn't know yet. The global view on that. I know you don't want to give us the answer. But you wanted to add something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add two things on the identity. Yes, there is right now a debate whether to descope something to take out of the digital identity wallet, which every member state should have in the future. The question is whether to have or not the payment feature to it. And as you can imagine, the current players are probably they are against that. And the banking federation is, I think, one behind the letter that sent to the commission that asked for the scoping, so taking out the payment feature out of the wallet. That's one thing. And on digital euro, just one thing that I wanted to add is that the commission also made it with ECB made it very clear that we are not yet at the level of programmable money. So digital euro is not programmable money yet. So that's why it's more into it's going more to replace. Not to replace, but to be an alternative to cash, which is some fear is missing out of the. There is not enough supply of cash, and there are some politicians fearing that we might lose privacy. So also there is a strong push to make the digital euro private. I'm not quite sure how this is going to be implemented because I don't know how we can have something very private in digital area, but anyway, that's the point I wanted to make.
Let me maybe summarize that point then for you. That you still wanted to add something to? No? To add on that last remark, the other thing that the Commission has been saying is it's not initially it was also meant for a large amount in savings. If you read the initial, and that whole part is gone now. It's small payments. We're talking about the whole wallet, 1,000, 2,000 euros is the amounts I hear.
C2C stuff.
So it's C2C and yeah, so that's the evolution that has taken. And for those who were present at our previous meetup, we had our state secretary presenting the Belgian state wallet that is upcoming. And we also have It's Me, which we all know if you live in Belgium too. So it's clear that this whole identity challenge of which wallets and where we keep the data and how we identify outside of the current apps is going to be a very interesting one to see. I mean, yeah, curious to see how that happens abroad. And we have a few, we have more questions now.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
It's more in addition to the previous question. Because in fact, we recently invited Piet Maleko to our roundtable, who's a former CEO of the Dutch Payment Association and currently also involved in one of the working groups of the ECB. And what he said was that Mr. Panetta actually, he was very much against programmable money. For him, we can talk about programmable payments, but not programmable money. I think that's a really big difference, and also in a way answers your question. If you make the parallel with a train, you have the rails, you have the train, and you have the goods in the train. For me, the digital euro are the goods in the train. When you talk about PSD2, you're talking about the rails, and perhaps the APIs that can be compared with the train. But I think those are three distinct levels that deserve different attention, also different discussion in that respect.
Thanks for that addition. Questions? I saw a hand going up, but that was not a question, right? So yeah, there we go. You're gonna have to pass the mic through.
Rick, there's an empty chair if you want. I think you can definitely.
I'm gonna.
So Vincent Mercenier, PS, but it's a question as a consumer, and maybe it's a question for Arnaud and Maria. What's the mindset of the Commission today regarding harmonization? Because we were talking about digital identity would be harmonized across the board and across the countries. What about EU IBAN?
Yeah, thanks.
I would say something that is not clear at this stage, and if we're looking to a common identifier like EU IBAN, I think that will be strongly related to the entity that will be selected as a scheme as well to facilitate all the exchange. I think they should have some control on that. We need to still regulate some data models, some exchange, and that should be part probably as a part of future specification. But at this stage, the feeling that I have, at least based on what we heard, is that we are not yet at that level of details in the technical definition of a future solution. That's
Yes, I mean, I haven't heard it. Maybe Niklas, you know something about it, but in the conversations I was involved, I didn't hear anyone mention an European IBAN. What we heard was that in PSD2, the Commission wants to finally put a clause that would allow non-banks to have direct access to national payment schemes, with some caveats, but still this will be the case. And maybe one off-topic of question, because we said is that we were going to have the payment services regulation, but there will also be a small part, payment services directive 3, where all the parts that doesn't fit into the regulation will be there. So
there's a fallback plan. We will have
there will be a PSD3.
Sorry for changing track, but I think it's important to say that I mean that's at least the plan right now.
Okay. Thanks for that. Time for one more question. It's great to make the audience uncomfortable. You're gonna have to deserve the food. So.
What about us?
Yeah. You've already deserved it. You've already deserved it. So no questions for Maria. She deserved her food. What are you struggling with in your companies, or what other projects? Go ahead.
I maybe have a bit of a random question because I come from a background in foreign exchange. So it's a really big business, foreign exchange, because these costs of transferring money from euro to Polish zloty to Danish krone, all of those things are really important for a lot of businesses. And this is something that is not, from my understanding, not at all covered. So basically, people are just kind of left to their own on the spreads and the pricing on these currency exchange through these payments. So is this something that could be envisaged towards the future? Something that that is being looked at.
Maybe point out for the audience that you also work for Extant and not
Yes.
for Wise, because we do have people from the formerly TransferWise, now called Wise, in the room, so they might want to answer the question. Yeah. Anybody who's in payment exchange that want to say? Otherwise, I'm gonna. Yeah. No. Large companies, you need to be cleared to speak in public. I know that's always a hard part for us to get those speakers on here, but.
Well, that's something that I already said in regard to the PSD2, that, I mean, you may now, if you don't have the ability to provide your own IBANs, this will, as lead as the PSD3, regulation, or one of the, or the PSD3, will, or may give you the chance to access the national payment scheme, so that you won't have to use a bank as an intermediary, but you could do it yourself, as long as you will fulfill the conditions that the Commission will provide in the text.
I'm going to invite you all for a round of applause for yourselves and for our speakers. So, big thanks for that. What we always do, it's not over yet. We do have some announcements to make, and while we do those, we're going to get the picture of all the speakers. That's what you're asking for, right? So, the speakers, you want us to sit down or stand up? Later on. Later on. Okay, you were giving me cues like the picture. Okay, go ahead. Alessandra is the CEO of Fintech Belgium, and she will give you some more introductions and information about what you should attend.
So I'll make it quite short. I see new faces in the room, so really welcome in our community here. So Fintech Belgium is the association, federation by and for fintechs active in Belgium. So we have international big players and also Belgian companies. We have, from very early startup to big players, as I just said. You can find actually all our members on our website. We also have a mapping of the Belgian fintechs, and this is about how the ecosystem looks in Belgium, very much linked to the DNA, payment and infrastructure, RegTech, and of course Belgium being like big savers, a lot in investment and financing solutions. So we represent a little bit more than 135 members actually, and we have 3 main missions to promote them, to represent them towards the regulator at a Belgian and also at a European level, and but also a lot of other stakeholders in the industry. We're talking about other hubs. We have like the European Digital Finance Association. You've met Maria tonight. She will tell you more about it as well. We have other members from this association in the room. It links us to 13 or 15 other countries, other hubs. We have, and then our main, another mission is what I call make the magic happen, and that's what's happening tonight, amongst others, and it is sharing experience, expertise, and so on. We do this by organizing a lot of events. This is one format. Another very nice format is breakfast. We have one in the middle of June. It's free events. It's also between 20 and 40 people, very informal. We organize as well custom events for our partners being more traditional players coming with challenges within our ecosystem, and we bring the fintechs around the table to help them with these challenges. We have also some kind of incubation events like webinars to help our startups, and the main one, this is where we are. We have actually a place where you can meet us, and some people come and work with us. It's a co-working space where we try, as I said, to connect the different players in the industry, to connect, collaborate, and innovate. One of our main event, and I will tell you more about it in a second, is the Digital Finance Summit. But before that, we have on the 1st of June the General Assembly, an anniversary of our 7th anniversary of Fintech Belgium. We have, I'll be horribly busy. I've counted 13 events by my holidays. So if you find me on my knees by July, you know why. These are our events. And we'll be also on Money 2020. We will have a stand with 11 of our members. So if you're around, please come. We're organizing a really nice Benelux side event. Some of our members who will be extant and Scudi are in the room. We will have, whether you understand or not, whether you come from Belgium or not, you're more than welcome to join the side event. It's a free event organized with the Loft and also Holland Fintech. We have a meetup. The next meetup will be on data economy with the summer barbecue. We're still looking for a partner to help us host this event. So if you want to help us with this, you're more than welcome to come to us. And then we will have at the end of the summer a networking drink on a rooftop terrace with a pane of 8 in the center of the center of Brussels with a digital KYC as well. And the big one I'm really excited about is the Digital Finance Summit. You can follow all our events on our website. You can actually subscribe to this event to this calendar, and it will appear in your own calendar. Now I hope that it's going to play. Yes, and that's the one I'm very excited about. Digital Finance Summit. It is a one-day conference. We're expecting over 700 people. We have 100 speakers, more than 100. Oh,
my name is Don Van Ack.
That's Don, actually. He's everywhere. No. Yes, I would like to have it, but it's just that we can maybe. Exactly. Oops, no. Where did it go? Yeah, here we go. But I will just turn the sound off if I can.
Anyway, save the date while we're figuring things out. 8th of December, right? So this is the cue, the unintended cue to put it in your agenda.
I don't want to anymore.
Press now.
Yeah, if I press, yes, that's it. So I said more than 700 people. We will have like more than 100 speakers. We have 4 stages. We'll be talking about every year hot topics. We've talked about regulation. We will be talking about generative AI and data-based technology. We will have. We will also talk about, I'm looking at Xavier because he's our content manager. If you have ideas, you can go to him.
Xavier, maybe stand up. So
yes, stand up so that we see who you are.
During the
yes.
I prepared nothing.
No, you didn't, I know. But we will be also talking about everything that has to do with the fact that finance is everywhere, is appearing everywhere. We're talking about embedded finance. We're talking about smart insurance, topics like shared economy and everything, what impact it has on the payment world and everything. We will have as well on stage 2, another topic that we will be talking about is, of course, banking as a service, and also the fact that we see a lot of fintechs going from B2C to B2B by white labeling and all the impacts it has. So we have on stage 2 the European Fintech Pitch Battle. So all the fintechs, startups and scale-ups in the room. The applications are open. You will be pitching. We will have 20 fintechs pitching in front of a jury of investors with maybe an award, as you've seen in the video at the end. And yeah, a very exciting day. More than 40 exhibitors. And more than 40 exhibitors, and we're still open to all to have more partners. So come to us if you want to join this incredible day. You have a barcode there if you want to get to the URL. Now, one thing that we do also for our fintechs, for our members, is to we aggregate all the jobs that they have. Talking about scraping earlier on, Mark, at another level, scraping their websites to have a career wall in fintech. So if you want to change job, or if you want to be more involved in a fintech, here is where to go to find the jobs available. I just wanted to also thank, again, all our partners. If we are able to do this, it is thanks to them. Again, thanks Dave, thanks KPMG, and thanks to all our other partners. Digital KYC is in the room. Here we go. And all the others as well. So thank you very much, and I'm not going to hold you longer. There's food, really good food, and good drinks afterwards. So see you later. Thank you very much.
And to be honest, with the practical analogy that you need to remember, you're going to the 10th floor.
Okay.
So
we need a badge, so follow.
And we need a bit, so follow. We need the badge to make it. It's like your boarding